Welcome, fellow junkers. Today, we're diving into one of the more controversial aspects of 40,000 lore, the ascension of Perturabo, who used to be the Primarch of the Iron Warriors, has now become a demon prince of chaos. On the surface, this might seem like a fitting punishment or reward for a life of bitterness and betrayal. Does it actually make sense for his character? Well, in my opinion, not really. But let's break it out. Perturabo, the Primarch of the Iron Warriors, was once a master of siegecraft and fortifications. Known for his brutal efficiency, his legion was often deployed in the grueling and thankless task of the Great Crusade, which bred deep resentment in him. However, Perturabo saw himself as a misunderstood genius and an architect of perfection, underappreciated by the Imperium, while other Primarchs, like, for example, Rogal Dorn, were celebrated. Perturabo received the harshest of assignments with little recognition. This fueled his bitterness and his nihilistic worldview. To him, life was a series of equations, and chaos was nothing more than an aberration, irrational, unpredictable, and weak. More than just a builder, Perturabo was the Imperium's foremost master of siegecraft and fortifications. Unlike Dorn, often hailed as the ultimate builder, Perturabo was a complete package. He was a builder, a destroyer, and a strategist. His fortresses weren't just defensive marvels, they were feats of mathematical precision and engineering genius. Perturabo understood not only how to construct defenses that could withstand any assault, but also how to dismantle those of his enemy with relentless efficiency. This expertise made him the go-to Primarch for impossible assignments, and he consistently delivered. However, his brilliance came at a cost. While Dorn's creations were celebrated as symbols of the Emperor's grand vision, Perturabo's work went largely underappreciated. His legion became the Imperium's thankless workhorses and grinded themselves down in brutal wars of attrition, earning neither glory nor recognition. When comparing the Primarchs Perturabo and Rogal Dorn, the differences are stark. Dorn was a brilliant architect, but his rigid thinking reflected in his fortifications, which were unyielding and uncompromising. Perturabo, in contrast, was adaptable. He understood that no defense was truly impenetrable, and that even the strongest of walls had weak points. This adaptability was on full display during the infamous Iron Cage incident. After the Horus Heresy, Perturabo lured Dorn and the Imperial Fist into a labyrinth death trap, a fortress designed not just to defend, but to bleed the attackers dry. Dorn's pride and overconfidence led his legion into a brutal war of attrition they were simply underprepared for. The Iron Cage wasn't merely a defensive structure, it was a psychological weapon. Perturabo used his unparalleled understanding of siege warfare to exploit Dorn's weaknesses, turning the battlefield into simply a slaughterhouse. The Imperial Fist were and suffered catastrophic losses, and only the intervention of Rabute Gilliman and the Ultramarines saved them from total annihilation. This battle showcased Perturabo at his peak, combining strategy, engineering, and ruthless pragmatism to prove a devastating point. He didn't just defeat the Imperial Fist, he humiliated them, forcing Dorn to confront the vulnerabilities in his supposed perfection. So why is Rogal Dorn celebrated as the poster boy for fortifications, while Perturabo is simply remembered as a bitter underdog? Well, it simply boils down to perception. Dorn built for the Emperor's vision of hope and unity, while Perturabo built for necessity and survival. But when it comes to results, Perturabo's track record is simply undeniable. The Iron Cage alone proves he wasn't just Dorn's equal, but he was his superior in this regard. This lack of recognition and deep-seated resentment were central to Perturabo's eventual betrayal. However, as we'll see, these traits also make his ascension feel out of character. Perturabo's relationship with chaos was complicated and often contradictory. Unlike other traitor Primarchs who embraced the ruinous powers with devotion or desperation, Perturabo remained distant, viewing chaos as simply a means to an end rather than something to revere. He exploited the powers of the warp and the gifts of these dark gods when it suited his needs, but he never allowed himself to become blinded by their promises. This pragmatic and utilitarian approach set him apart from figures like Lorgar, who saw chaos as the divine truth, or Fulgrim, who succumbed to the hedonistic allure. Central to Perturabo's character was his disdain for servitude. He valued control and logic above all else. Chaos by its very nature is an antithesis to these ideas. It thrives on unpredictability, emotional excess, and abandonment of all order, all things Perturabo inherently despised. To him, chaos was nothing more than another flawed system in a broken universe, an aberration to be manipulated when necessary but never trusted. This pragmatic outlook makes his eventual ascension to demonhood deeply puzzling. Chaos represents simply everything Perturabo loathed: irrationality, whimsy, and dependency on higher powers. While Horus was seduced by promises of ultimate power, Angron enslaved by his own bloodlust, and Mortarion bound by his bitterness, Perturabo had always seemed above such temptations. His defining trait was his cold, logical mindset, and chaos was simply another tool in his arsenal, not an ideal to which he would willingly submit. Perturabo to accept ascension to demonhood feels at odds with his established character. Becoming a demon prince ties him irrevocably to the whims of chaos, effectively shackling him to the very forces he viewed with disdain. For someone who valued independence and mastery over his own fate, such an act seems more like a betrayal of his core principles rather than a natural progression. Instead of standing as a figure who manipulated chaos without succumbing to it, Perturabo's story takes a turn that undermines the very traits that define them. Perturabo's ascension to demonhood feels like a fundamental contradiction of his character, especially when compared to other traitor primarchs whose transformations aligned with their personalities and motivations. Angron's, driven by an unrelenting rage, became a reflection of his fury as the demon prince of Khorne. Mortarion's despair and bitterness found him a natural home in the surface of Nurgle, and Fulgrim's hedonism and pursuit of perfection led him willingly to the embrace of Slaanesh. Even Magnus, broken and betrayed by the Imperium, turned to Tzeentch as being who offered him knowledge and power. That is what he sought. Their falls make sense. Their ascensions are a logical culmination of their character arcs. Perturabo's, however, stands apart. His defining traits, rationality, pragmatism, and disdain for chaos, don't align with the dependency and subservience that come along with demonhood. Chaos offers its champions powers, but at the cost of autonomy, something Perturabo valued above all. Throughout his life, he viewed chaos as flawed, irrational force, an unreliable tool to be used and discarded, not something worthy of worship or allegiance. Becoming a demon prince ties Perturabo irrevocably to the wills of the chaos gods, effectively reducing him to a pawn of the very entities he saw beneath him. Unlike the other primarchs, whose transformations symbolize their ultimate acceptance of chaos, Perturabo's ascension feels forced, as though it was imposed rather than chosen. This undermines his character, transforming him from a calculating, self-reliant genius into yet another servant of the ruinous powers. For a primarch whose story is defined by bitterness and rejection, both of the Imperium and of chaos, demonhood feels like an ill-fitting conclusion. It erases the uniqueness of his character, turning him into a generic villain instead of maintaining the complexity that made him intriguing. Perturabo's true strength lay in his ability to wield chaos without succumbing to it, a balance that his transformation disrupts completely. The decision to make Perturabo simply a demon prince undermines what made him one of the most compelling primarchs in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Like many of his brothers, Perturabo's story wasn't driven by blind faith, emotional extremes, or seductive promises. His narrative was rooted in cold logic, bitter pragmatism, and a relentless pursuit of perfection in a galaxy that refused to acknowledge his worth. By ascending to demonhood, Perturabo's uniqueness is stripped away. He becomes yet another servant, indistinguishable from the likes of Angron or Fulgrim, whose personalities were fundamentally aligned with the forces they came to represent. Perturabo's ascension feels less like a natural conclusion to his arc and more like a checkbox on the traitor primarch roster, reducing him to a trope instead of preserving his individuality. What makes his transformation even more baffling is how it contradicts the very themes of Perturabo's character. He despised the irrationality and instability of chaos, viewing it as simply a flawed system and a flawed universe. Becoming a demon prince ties him irrevocably to the forces he disdained, shackling him to the whims of the ruinous powers and erasing the independence he fought so hard to maintain. For a character whose story is about rejection of the Imperium, of recognition, and even of chaos itself, demonhood feels wrong. Perturabo's story could have been far more compelling if he remained defiant, using chaos as simply a tool without submitting to it. Staying true to his rational and pragmatic nature, this would have preserved his identity as a character who rejected both the Emperor's vision and the false promises of chaos, carving his own bitter path in the galaxy that refused to see his genius. Instead, his transformation into a demon prince undermines his character, making him a footnote in a narrative where he could have been truly exceptional. In conclusion, Perturabo's ascension to demonhood might be canon, but it doesn't align with the core of his character, in my opinion. It feels like a missed opportunity to explore his deeper complexities. But what do you think? Was this ascension truly a brilliant twist or a misstep in the lore? Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Warhammer deep dives. Till next time, stay grimdark, my friends. Remember, chunk it out.